John 13:35 states, "Love one another as I have loved you, so you must love one another. By this everyone will know that you are my disciples, if you love one another." In order to love someone, you must do a lot of things. You must be caring, understanding, accepting, forgiving, as well as tolerant. Although some of these tasks may be hard to do at times, they are vital if you are interested in walking in the footsteps of Jesus Christ. As Christians, we are called to fulfill one of God's greatest commandments, which is to love your neighbor as yourself. If we are willing to call ourselves Christians, we must be willing to walk in the footsteps of Jesus and treat others the way that he would treat them. As a Christian, I know that it is just as easy to push someone away from Christ as it is to pull someone closer. It all comes down to the way that we act and the way that we treat people who come from different walks of life. Today I will be speaking to you about Christ followers' intolerance toward homosexuals and explaining 3 different ways that Christians can demonstrate more love toward them, opposed to hatred and intolerance. In order for Christians to be more Christ-like when it comes to the way that we treat those with a different sexual orientation, we must stop the judgments, stop the hatred, and love the way that Jesus loves us. First off, we must stop the judgments. I am saddened by the judgments that some Christians exude, as it is of no relevance to the gospel of Christ. Anti-gay campaigns have become top priority in some churches when there are more important issues that need to be addressed. Perhaps we should each focus on an issue that will require us as individuals to change instead of insisting others to change. Jesus made it very clear that he wanted us to help the poor, the oppressed, the hungry, the sick, the lonely, and the widowed. Christians should not be standing in judgment and instead should be examples of Christ. After reading a countless amount of anti-gay articles, blogs, and academic papers, I observed that in present day, homosexuality is not just a sin, but the sin. Mother Teresa said, "When we judge people, we have no time to love them," and I believe that this is spot on. Secondly, we must stop the hatred. In a book by Matt Comer called In Crisis, 40 stories revealing the personal, social, and religious pain and trauma of growing up gay in America, he speaks of a story which he will never forget. Matt Comer remembers quite clearly that his church's stance on homosexuality. His North Carolina Baptist pastor suggested that a way to deal with homosexuals was to put all the queers on a ship, cut a hole in the side, and then send it out to sea. Should this be the response of Christ followers? Should Christians be this hateful toward sinners when we are all sinners and all sin is equal? This behavior is parallel to the behavior of the Pharisees, who were all read up on the law but lacked compassion, mercy, and heart. No matter what a church's view is on the matter, they should not be demonstrating hatred and unloving attitudes toward any group of sinners. The response to homosexuals in 2 African countries, which are 85% Christian, both sickens and saddens me. These countries wish to pass a law which increases jail time for homosexuals from 14 years in prison to life in prison, and in some cases even includes the death penalty. This new law would also make it a crime if someone did not report a known homosexual to authorities. When Jesus meets the adulterous woman in the book of John, his response is to not punish and condemn her, but to love and to forgive her. He states one of his famous quotes, "Let him who is without sin among you be the first to throw a stone at her." Jesus understood that you cannot reach out to people by condemning them, and although he hated her sin, he did not hate the sinner. He instead showed her love and compassion, and this is the example that Christians should follow. Most importantly, we must love others the way that Jesus loves us. A New York Times article reports that in Nigeria, lawmakers are debating a bill that would ban any form of association with a homosexual, even sharing a meal. This, for me, is a human rights issue. This is not at all the response that Jesus would have toward a sinner. In fact, did Jesus not break bread with the sinners? When the Pharisees saw Jesus eating with the sinners and the tax collectors, they asked him why. He responded, "It is not the healthy who need a doctor, but the sick. I have not come to call the righteous, but sinners." To isolate homosexuals and forbid others to even eat a meal with them is barbaric. We must love these people the way that Jesus loves us and act the way that Christ did. As Christians, I believe that we must make it a point to affirm God's love for everyone. God values all human life, and I think that Christians should feel the same way. It appears that some church's moral values do not include tolerance, and I find this a major issue that needs to be dealt with. You shall love your neighbors as yourself is one of the greatest commandments that we must follow. Isolating the gay community and condemning them for their sin is not how a church should react, and will certainly not draw them closer to God. In order for Christians to be more Christ-like when it comes to the way that we treat those with a different sexual orientation, we must stop the judgments, stop the hatred, and love the way that Jesus loves us. We must demonstrate more love toward these people opposed to hatred and intolerance toward them. According to Dr. Donald Alban, God values all human life. He loves us, and he sent his only Son to die for us while we were still sinners. If Jesus would die for every sinner, the least we can do is try our best to live as he did. I will close with a verse that is very important to remember. For God did not send his Son into the world to condemn the world, but in order that the world might be saved through him. Thank you.